Perfect. We're gonna start. We have 15 people, and I think more are gonna join in a couple of minutes. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this new PMBers event. We're here going to talk about how to manage AI products and careers in big tech with Neha Garg. Neha is a dynamic product lead currently shaping the future of Google Assistant and Gemini with a robust product background in product management at Udacity and LinkedIn. She has proven a track record in driving innovative solutions in technology. Neha holds an MBA from Carnegie Mellon University's Taper School of Business and a bachelor's in electronics and communications from the Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. Her expertise bridges engineering and product strategy, making her a key player in the tech industry. Welcome, Neha. Nice to have you
Uh,
here.
thank, Thank you for having me. Very excited to be talking with this group of people. My pleasure to be here.
It is great to have you here, and thank you for your time. We know us from Udacity, and I want to thank you for having your disposition to help us and to teach us. I want to start talking about your career. I think you are really an amazing product lead, and you have an amazing career right now. And we want to learn more about it. What was your process from becoming a product lead at Google, and what recommendations would you give to someone aspiring to product management roles in big tech companies?
Sure. Let me start with my journey because my journey was very had a lot of ups and downs, and I started with a PM career through a transactional transitional ladder, so a different route than what most people take. So I started as out as an engineer and did MBA after that, and then consulting for a couple of years. Realized that consulting gives me that strategic head, but does not allow me to see the outcome of the work that I'm doing. So it is that's when I was motivated to start see join like a regular company, a big tech company, and start seeing the actual impact of the work that I'm doing. So I started my um, career with LinkedIn. I started in a strategy role at LinkedIn, and I transitioned to product management at LinkedIn. Like answering your second part of the question, that's generally how I've seen people how get into product management. Either uh, you get into product management right out of your MBA or your undergrad school, and there are typical process in these big tech companies for doing that, or you transition from a role A to role B. So in a strategy role where you find a sponsor within a company in a product. So it could be a director or a group PM who's willing to take a bet on you, and they're willing to do like a product role for a project and assess your performance over a period of time. So those are generally, I think, what I've seen, how I've seen this pan out both at LinkedIn and Google. At Google, when I went into product management, at that time I was already a product manager at prior companies, so it was relatively easy for me to get into a product role at Google. But within Google itself, I've seen people who are in program management roles or strategy roles go through the route that went through at LinkedIn, where they find a product sponsor who's willing to work with them as a, we call them rotator within Google. So they work as PM rotators for a couple of months, and based on their performance, then they're able to transition into the full-time product roles. So yeah, those are generally two paths to work as a PM in big tech.
And how was it challenging to get into big tech companies such as Google or LinkedIn? What do you think?
I am in Silicon Valley, so I feel that I am fortunate in that way that I have access to these companies who are here as well and are able to, yeah, are willing to talk to me. I feel it is challenging or not challenging depending on like how you approach it, I think. And depending on your skill sets and the job market right now, I know the job market is pretty tough, and some of the best talents, and some of the best candidates we might have to say no to just because there are so limited opportunities that are available.
Sure.
I think every company is looking for very different thing when it comes to um, product management. So anybody who is going through that process, uh, just look at, like, there is a lot of material available online on the kind of things that the company might be evaluating you on. So make sure go through that and understand what are the key nuances um, in the skills or the things that any big company might be looking for.
Understood. And any tips for getting into those big ones like Google? Like, are any
Ye-
tips for the interviews or how to get in?
Yeah, I think for Google, like I do conduct a lot of interviews for product managers within Google. I think a couple of patterns that I have seen that works really well for the people who crack it. A is, I feel like there are a lot of PMs who are really amazing or could do an amazing job, but they have not prepared for the interview. So I think definitely first step should be to make sure that you take out the time to prepare for the interviews. And if your recruiter should always provide you what are the key skills, key things that you would be interviewed for. So for example, at Google interview, we are typically trying to assess you on how good is your product thinking. We are trying to assess you how good are you in your analytics, right? So in understanding the metrics and setting up goals for the teams, and how good you are at your go-to-market strategy. But beyond all of that, like what sets also a great candidate apart from the good candidate is how creatively are you able to think. How well can you think about different options and pros and cons between different options and select the right option given a situation. Excuse me. And verbalize your choice. So those are some of the key things to keep in mind. Google
Perfect.
does measure you on. I know there are some companies who don't look at that, but Google does measure you on what we call creative thinking and big thinking. So make sure no random idea is a bad idea. Make sure to think big and think long term.
Very good advice. And there are some good websites that also can help you to prepare. I think that there are some websites that also have like a list of the questions typically asked us at those big companies. For example, I think one of them is called exponent.com or something like that. And I think that's a good way to follow your advice on preparing for that interview. And I want to continue because something very interesting is that you're working right now with Gen AI and with Gemini and the Google Assistant, which is cutting edge. I think that's amazing. And what was your learning path to acquire the knowledge in Gen AI, and what steps would you suggest to someone who wants to start about learning about this topic from scratch and that wants to work in product in these AI topics?
Yeah. So my path to Gen AI was I almost like fell into Gen AI space because I was working with Google Assistant before it became part of the Google Assistant team became Gemini, and so that's how I got moved into it. And how I mean, I have always been, with Google Assistant. It gave me so I in our mind, Google Assistant technology was like LLM point zero, and then what we have today is LLM version 1. So it was a previous iteration of that technology, and now LLMs helps us solidify the vision that we had with Google Assistant a bit more. But like this space is very very fast moving, and every day I have to go through what is happening in the industry, who's the new player, what have they done. So that itself like keeps me on my toes. So
And
anybody
how do
who
you do that? Do you listen to
yeah
podcasts, or do you how do
Yeah.
you do it?
So in the link that I have shared on the chat, I have shared some of so somebody who's coming completely new to Gen AI. I've shared the links, few resources which I personally found to be very very useful for really understanding the depth of the product, and the depth of Gen AI as a space and what is happening and what is a vision of it in terms of my own process of keeping in touch. So I have subscribed to a couple of newsletters that I that help me keep updated on that. And then I follow a couple of folks on X or Twitter, to get an update on what is happening. I follow a lot of companies like our competitors in this space to keep updated on the product that they are building. Then there are some, like everybody in the Silicon Valley right now is investing in this space. So all the VCs are publishing reports on their learnings or their investment thesis in this area. So that's also a good place to learn from. And personally, I am a kind of a person, like one advice that I would give to anybody who wants to build in Gen AI, because in Gen AI, the model itself is a product. Like, definitely try to make sure you understand the technical side of things in depth, because the more you can understand that, the better your grasp of what the product can and cannot do would be, and that would help you build the product with that mindset. And I have found deeplearning.ai, which is Andrew Ng's site, as pretty amazing. It has pretty good content for Gen AI, latest. What are some of the things that are happening in Gen AI?
And what about Udacity? You come from Udacity. Did you take any of their courses on that, or what do you think about those
I've
courses?
not been following Udacity. Sorry,
No,
I don't know. So I just completely I lost in touch with Udacity right now. So I don't know what the catalog is right now for Gen AI.
perfect. Yeah, I have taken a few, and if you're interested, I think there are some good courses in there for beginners, and also both for, let's say, product managers or more the business side, but also for developers. So definitely, that's great. And any particular tip on what to learn if you are in product management and want to work with AI or Gen AI?
Sure. So I think, I mean, maybe let me start answering that question with first. Uh, I don't know how much of the audience, how many of you have worked in Gen AI, but let me first like explain that uh, product development with Gen AI looks completely different or very different than Gen AI product management. What is product management with just regular Web 2.0 kind of products. And the couple of uh, differences that you would notice is first, as I said, like you would move from very deterministic requirement setting. So if this happens, then do this, to probabilistic requirements. So because the model will never give you the same response, right? So you have to be comfortable with the responses that the model gives and make sure that it falls within your requirements. And and then in that case, evals, I'm sure like most of you might have heard that word, which is basically uh, iteratively testing the response back from your model, and comparing it against your ideal response and giving it a score. So evals become your friend in this space. And as on defining the evals and the evals template and would be as important, probably more important than writing the requirements in your of your product, uh, because and it would take you similar amount of time because or more. So if you say like in our average product development you were spending say 25% on discovering the problem, and then another 25 and stakeholder alignment, and then another 25% in nailing down the requirements. In in this world, like you again evals would take you another 25% of your time. So it is a very intensive work that you need to do as a product manager to get right. So I think that's one thing to make sure you're doing it right. Second, I think you guys must all be aware of like all the hallucination risk and the safety risk that comes with working with LLMs, and just making sure you're building you're building like enough uh, guardrails against those things in your product like become very important. And those are against again like evals for you have to conduct regular evals for those to make sure there is no bias in your system, to make sure it is not hallucinating. And yeah, and then I think third big consideration is the data and how you're treating the data that you're using to train the model, and the safety and the security of that data. So
This Yeah,
yeah.
these Gen AI products are really really interesting, and I want to continue with the next question. If you can describe the process and the key principles that guide AI product development at Google, and what are the biggest challenges, and if you want, you can share the slides that you prepared with to us to learn more about it.
Yeah, I have. Maybe I can present my screen. I have talked about some of this through, but we can discuss them, and we can, talk about that. Um, so let's go to the next slide. So generally, I think uh, as a product manager, like looking at all my learnings from building at Google, I think some of the good principles for building good products at Google are first, make sure you understand the customer really well. I think any good product development starts with understanding your users and users need, and there are a couple of ways that I found personally to be very useful to do that. First is understand what are the basic human psychology and basic human needs. And what I have found is, irrespective of the technology shift that happens, those basic human needs don't change. How you fulfill them, how you serve them might get changed, but the underlying need themselves, they don't change much. The second is really know your users, so observe them using your product, do your UXRs, and build for everybody. Like that is one of the key principles at Google. Since Google is a very global company and its products are used by billions and billions of users, how do you build the product that is applicable for all the users, right? Is one of the key fundamental principles that you have to keep in mind when thinking about uh, that. So you have to understand not just like the US users in the US, but you say users in Colombia and users in India, and have a holistic picture of what your users really want. And then I personally find that data really helps me put that extra layer, that additional layer of understanding the users more holistically on top of all the UXRs and user studies that we have done. Then the second big principle that I have found is that I really appreciate working with Google is think big and think long term. So especially like now when everything seems to be shifting, um, start thinking about what the future could look like 10 years from now. What would be the key assumptions that needs to be true for that future to look like, and then start building backwards from there. So it would help you really build that innovative product, um, and go in the directions that nobody's thinking of today but would pan out 10 years from now. So don't be afraid to take that long term bets when you're thinking about building a good product. And then third is definitely respect the opportunity that you're given, in terms of making sure that you're building the constant trust with your users, by making keeping that privacy and their safety in mind as you're building the product. So now, like, moving into some of the challenges when thinking about building with Gen AI, I've talked about a few of them already. Like, you are going to move from setting very deterministic requirements to the probabilistic outcome from model. So how do you build a product taking that into account, is a very interesting problem to think about when you're building product in this space. The second is making sure you're in the in the mind of, like, from the principle of building for everyone, make sure you're eliminating any bias and fairness as much as possible, and then keep users data safe. And then definitely, like, this space is evolving so rapidly, so keep up with the technology change, and make sure you are thinking through them. If, say, there is something new that comes up and disrupts the space you're already thinking about, think about how, uh, what else you can do that could help you continue to have your differentiation. So then I think, some of the keys that I have listed here is to really stand out as a great product manager in Gen AI space. Understand the technology. I think that's one thing that I have seen even within Google. One thing that separates a great product manager in Gen AI versus an average product manager, the product managers who are able to understand the technology, it gives them an edge, because they're able to not understand the second and the third order impact of the things that they want to build. Then second is know how to run evals. This would, um, it is a learning process, and honestly there is, like, a lot of research happening in this space, so even this space is evolving. But evals, like, as a product manager, nobody talks about it in, like, if you look at podcasts and media, like, nobody gives you that talks about running evals. But evals is one of the most critical pieces to nail down if you want to build great product in this space. And definitely, I think we talked about this enough. So make sure you understand, you keep up with all the changes in this industry. Um, then I've listed, like, few great resources here that I found very useful to help help gain the full understanding of this area. So the first one is, like, Andres Kaparthi's. Generally, Andres is a good resource to follow regardless, but his this
Yeah, he's
1 hour
amazing.
video, 1 hour video is amazing. Then the second one is the economics of Gen AI, and this one is from A16Z. So this is a great to understand, why everybody's so gung ho about Gen AI from economic perspective. Then Andrew Ng's agentic workflows talk is pretty amazing as well. And then deep learning.ai are some of my go-to resources.
Perfect. Thank you a lot, Neha, for that. And yeah, I definitely recommend Andre's um, podcasts and all of the content that he has uploaded or the interviews that he has in YouTube. Definitely a great source to learn more about Gen AI and LMs and all of those topics. And now we're going to the second section of this event. Now we're going to open to the questions that the audience are going to already ask here in the chat and that want to ask. And how it's going to work is please try to write down your question in the chat. And there is also one button at the bottom, if you're in the computer, that says request to join live call. And I think that also if you have the mobile app, you can also maybe look for that button, and if you want, you can call and you can ask the question yourself. So let's see some of the questions here. One second. Okay, we see one here from Andres. We can start with that one. Remember too, if you have any questions, you can send them here in the chat in Riverside. That's the platform that we're using, or you can also send them to our WhatsApp group in PMBers, and I can also read the questions there if you want. I don't see that anyone has requested to join the live call, so I'm gonna just start, and if anyone calls, I can let them in. This is the first question, Neha, from Andres. I'm gonna show it here in the live stream.
Yeah.
How to include safety while developing Gen AI products.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the first thing to think about when thinking about including safety is define the principles of the product from the safety perspective. So, what kind of things you want your product to be able to do versus not do. Let me give you like a very simple example. Right today, if I am using a text message, simple messaging, any messaging app, I can write whatever I want and hit a send button, and it would get sent to one of the recipients that I want to send the message to. And I can write any kind of harmful content, and nobody is going to stop me from doing that. But let's suppose ChatGPT or Gemini adds the new functionality which allows you to send a message through their platform. So you can ask Gemini, you can create a message with Gemini and then send it, or you can just send a message and it can help you create the message and then send. Now, should we have the same principles as the normal text message where you were it's a tool where user can just send whatever text they want to the recipient, or should we have certain guardrails here which allows do not allow you to send harmful content through Gemini, right? So those are the kind of debates that you need to have to really know like where would you draw the boundary of your product from a safety perspective. Once you have those principles nailed down, um, and you can argue anyways, and I think definitely understand like what would be the impact on the users for those. And once you have the principles, test your product, um, how your current product is behaving for those use cases, and is it in line with your principles. And if it is not, then you have to go back and fine tune your model, or train the model to reflect the principles that you want it to have, and then do the evals again and make sure it is following the principles that you want to follow.
The next question from Daniel, I'm going to show it on the live stream, and is how could you tell us a little bit about how teams work at Google, and what are the profiles of people who work with you?
Yeah, sure. So let me tell you, Google is a very big company, and every so what we have, what we call product areas. So like example, YouTube is a product area, Maps is a product area. So every product area might work a bit differently than the other product area. um, I will give you the example of like Gemini, given it is a very fast moving space. So we operate like a startup within Google because how fast moving this space is. Um, so currently in within Gemini, we are arranged in a pod structure. So what that means is we have a PM, and there is the Edge team who I work directly with, and then there is a UX person assigned to that pod. Besides that, there is a business if we need to work with third party apps like say WhatsApp or Spotify. So there is a BD person that we work very closely with. Then there is a PGM or program manager who help make sure we are on track for our product and helps manage our milestones. Um, who else do we work with? Then there's a marketing person. So when we come to, before launching the product, we make sure we have a go to market. So there's a marketing person that we work with. And yeah, that's basically some of the core team members, but you have like so many other people whom you can reach out to. For example, you have a UXR person you can reach out to if you want to get more facing feedback about the product or the idea that you're exploring. um, we also have um, access to some of like some other external teams who can help you for running the evals if the team is too overburdened, because it takes a lot of time. So yeah, that's the simplest structure actually within Google that I've seen. And the primary reason for having this kind of structure is to make sure we can iterate on the product very fast, and there are not many external dependencies outside of the core team, so it allows us to move faster.
The next question is from Catalina. I'm going to show it. Do you have any tips or frameworks for thinking big and creatively?
Mm, tips, thinking big and thinking. So, for thinking big, think about, if you're trying to think about a problem you want to address. Definitely think of in terms of how many people would it impact, and how deep is that pain point. Is that pain point, only 1% minor nuisance, or is it really really deep that they're even willing to pay you money, right? And does that impact, say, only like 10 people, or does it impact thousands and thousands and millions of users? And also, that's one way to think about it, but also think about like the situational need as well. So one of my learning was like Google Assistant. You can always argue that people have phones, so like why do they need Google Assistant on their phones? And that's because it unlocks the situation. They use it when their hands are busy, or they're so they might be driving, or they might be cooking, or so it unlocks that situational need. So in that moment when they cannot use their hands for the phones, that's when people really want to use their voice to get help. uh, so that's another way to think about how big the market is, how big to think about it. Creativity, I would say, just keep practicing new ideas. No random idea is a bad idea. It just, it's a process. One thing, I'm sure, like, since most of you are product managers, you know this, but um, no idea comes fully formed. You get like a seed of an idea and you build on that, and it's a creative process. So think about, so that's generally how I would say, like, don't discard any idea. Think, even if the first iteration doesn't work in your head, think about what is the next iteration of it that could work. And it is a lot of, I say, like, going back and forth with the same idea, having the being able to have a conversation about an idea in your mind on which scenarios it can work, not work. That's what generally I found it worked for me.
The next question from Jose. This is an interesting one. How can you deal with the fear of being replaced by AI?
How
I
can
think
we
that
do?
I also want to talk a little bit about that one, but let's start with the expert.
Uh, I hope that we are building a product which it will not uh, replace the replace people, but help them. So I want to build a product which acts as your companion, as your guide, rather than completely like replacing you. And honestly, like I have a 2 year old, and I feel like I am so swamped with work. And if I somebody can come and do a part of my work, I'm like happily give away my work to them. So I want to build like products that help people rather than replace them. Is how I generally think about it.
I agree, and something that I have heard many times, and from one of my professors, the machine learning professor in Georgia Tech, is that uh, machine learning and AI is not gonna replace you. People that learn how to use AI is gonna replace you. That's I think that's the most important thing. If you don't learn how to use those tools, if you don't learn how to be more productive, or do your job better using those tools, definitely you're gonna stay behind. And a person that learns how to use them is definitely the one that's gonna replace you or someone else. I think that's the most important thing, and that definitely I think it's something that is just gonna explode the productivity around the world and allow you to do things that uh, have never been done before, like 50 or 20 years before. We never imagined some of the jobs that we have today. I think that today we can't imagine the kind of jobs of the future that we're gonna have in 10 or 20 years. And the next question from Fernanda is, what are the main strategies you implement to mitigate bias in AI products you develop?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of strategies to that we use. So while we are training the data, we make sure that we are training the data on the representative set, so that we are not biasing for or against a particular user base. And then we also make sure, when we are evaluating, so running the evals on these, we are testing for the any bias in the system. So I mean, it comes down to those two. And anytime we notice a bias, then we go back to making understanding our training data, updating our training data, and rerunning the evals.
The next question is from Noelia. Let me show it. If I'm not a software engineer and my background is more related to business engineering, do you recommend starting with the basics like statistics, data science, machine learning, and deep learning?
uh, to get into Gen AI.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think yeah to start working with Gen AI. Yeah, I suppose and AI.
if
Yeah,
I am not a
she
software, okay,
replied
okay,
yes to start
okay,
working.
okay. Um, I on the engineering side, maybe or you probably have better idea of what to learn. I would say like on the product management side, start. I mean, you don't have to know too much of technical details on the product management side. Um, start start with understanding how transformers work, how the LLM models are trained, how what are some of the key basic technology that pins it. But beyond that, I don't think you need to know like too much depth into that. You can, I think deeplearning.ai is certainly a good resource for that. I think Alvaro was saying Udacity is a good resource too, so definitely check out Udacity as well. Um, yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, so no need for, let's say, heavy statistics and data science if you want to get into AI or Gen AI in product management.
I think you can. It depends on what you want to do in Gen AI. Also, I think a lot of it learning can happen on the job as well if you understand the basics, right? So you don't have to probably learn. I mean, I'm assuming some everybody knows 10th grade statistics
Right.
because that right like. So I think that should be sufficient for now. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. The next one from Martin. How do you balance the potential risks and biases associated with AI with the need to innovate and drive business results?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think there is. I don't think we are saying, oh, let us do this harm, but it will drive this result. It's always okay. We have to solve this problem, or we have to create this kind of. We can have this kind of impact on users, but whatever product we launch, it shouldn't have any harm to the users. It shouldn't have any bias against the users. So I think bias, it is not balanced. It's definitely no bias and no harm to the users, and let's create the impact for them.
And have you ever feel like in a situation, not necessarily in this one, but or in any other job, like feel sometimes like the pressure of having something and risking, or and not and feeling that there's like a risk that something's not ready and might cause any kind of problems or something?
Not definitely not. I think with we have a very high launch bar for our product at
Okay.
Gemini, because we understand the potential danger this can cause if not built right. So it goes through very rigorous testing, and every launch is approved by the highest leadership before we can launch
Well,
it. So yeah, I don't
so
think.
like the leadership is definitely important in this case. Like
Yeah,
having a
yeah,
like a good leadership is what makes sure that this kind of dilemmas doesn't happen.
that's right. Yeah.
Perfect. There's another from Adriano Rego, PM at Platzi.
Question.
How can we properly set user expectations when using products that have Gen AI at their core, given that these can hallucinate?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think so. Maybe a fun anecdote on this one. So, within Google, like as you know, that some of the basic technology for Gen AI got developed at Google back in 2016, and there was like an earlier version of these LLMs even back in 2019 2020 at Google, and which we were had start like they were called BERT model at the time, and we had started working on them, but we never launched any user facing product with that, because we knew that it hallucinates, and it might not get the things right. Now I think a lot of that has changed, where we are constantly monitoring the model and looking at what is the hallucination risk, and we are always um, trying to get the hallucination down to us below a certain percentage. So I think given the space, you might not be able to get hallucination down to a 0%, but for your product, you have to define that boundary, right? And let's say like you want your hallucination rate to be less than 0.001%, whatever that target that you set. So, and when you're running those evals, then you make sure that it sticks with below that rate. Otherwise, you have to continue to go back to training the model, doing RFLH, making sure like it is aligned to what we want to show, and have model iterate before you can launch the product.
The next question from Jose. Do you see that in the future there will be no web interfaces as we know them and everything will be done with a chat that performs and gives the information you need?
I am not able to predict the future, so don't know how that would be. That might be an outcome. That might not be an outcome. I have no way to say that.
But do you think that Gemini will replace a lot of current apps or not?
Uh, I feel like it would be an additive to a lot of those apps rather than replacing them. So how can it make the apps better, the existing experience, not just Gemini, like any LLM. How can they make the existing apps better or existing way of doing things better than what exists today? So yeah, I think people are visual learners as well. So either through LLMs or even outside, like they would want to see something visually displayed as well, not just like the conversation, the chat, right? So the visual has to be part of the experience that the whatever experience that the user will have. That's my hypothesis, but I could be wrong.
Awesome. Let's see if we have any more questions. I don't see any other question in the chat. If you want to ask something else, please do it now. Or if not, then we can close the audience questions part of this call and close this session. So let's wait for 1 minute. If not, we and let me check the WhatsApp group. Okay, I don't see any other one. Oh no, yeah, there's one more. Let me see. Okay, yeah. Let me see if we can. This is from Javier. Hi Neha. Is there any specific data domain from each competitor? Call if Meta, Google, OpenAI that would set them apart from each other at the end. Call it Gemini best for work and video, Llama best at something.
That's again like something predicting into the future. I think right now the competition is pretty intense for the model. I don't think anybody has a clear niche right now in terms of their model, right? But it's yeah, we have to wait and see how that changes in the future.
And do you see any like big differentiator from that Gemini has over OpenAI or Amazon's, for example? Like any
Uh,
domain or any particular domain? I don't know, maybe health or something.
I think yet to be seen. Right, like as everybody launches their roadmap, I think things would probably become a bit more clear in 18 months to 2 years from now, what that looks like.
We have another question from Fernanda. How do you combine insights from data and psychology to design more intuitive and effective user interfaces and user experiences?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Let me give you the simplest example of this. So, one of the principles in psychology is uh, people, um, you know, when they're engaging, like they want to have what they if they want to have something, they really want it without much friction and as soon as possible, right? And so when you're thinking about designing your features or your flow, you want to make sure they go through as little steps to get to the product value as possible, and they don't have to click through 5 different pages or um, 6 different tabs to really get to what they want. And the way to also combine that with the data is, let's say you um, once you build your initial flow, look at your funnel, like right from the moment the user enters your product to the moment where they're getting the value, or the actual thing that they want get done, and see how the users are dropping at each point of the funnel, each thing, each step, and see how you can optimize it to reduce the friction which the users don't want to get value from your product. So that's how you would think about it. And then second, think about but you can also like segment the users by different categories and see what is the impact of your product on each of those categories, yeah, etc. So that's a very generic example, but that's the best
Thank
I
you.
can give it. Yeah.
There is one question from Natalie. Do you have any specific or favorite method to test functionalities with users before launch?
Method to test functionalities. Generally, I can say like at Google, before doing any launch, we run a live experiment to really understand, like some kind of an A/B experiment, to understand how the change that you're doing or the feature that you're working on impacts the user and the metrics that you want to move. So that's, I think, I find that very useful in my own practice too, especially like in this space, or generally like any space which is very fast moving, and uh, it might be sometimes faster to just build something, test it out, by launching it on a very small percentage and see how that it impacts your users and the metrics that you want to move, then, or rather than trying to run the UXRs that you might want to run. So there are, like, I think, different advantages for different methods, but sometimes like LE might be very fast and efficient.
Any books or any courses, any course recommendations related to that or not?
For launching the product,
Yeah, maybe for launching and and testing before launching.
um,
No.
nothing. Sorry,
Okay.
no, but
Let's see if we have any other questions. If you have your questions, please send it now because we only have 5 minutes left, and and we're gonna close. So take advantage of this amazing opportunity to ask Neha. Let me check our WhatsApp group if we have any questions. No, perfect. Okay, I don't think that we have any other questions. I want to thank our audience and all our fellow members of the PM Bears community here in Colombia. I don't know if you have been in Colombia, Neha.
never been to Colombia,
No,
but now it's on my list to go.
you are more than welcome, and you are more than invited to one of our events as a special guest. Uh,
Appreciate it.
Hopefully,
Yeah,
you can come here in the future.
yeah, I hope so too. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation. So appreciate Alvaro for organizing this.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you for your time, and it's amazing to have you here, a person with such an amazing career, and right now working in the Google Assistant and Gemini. That's the cutting edge. Amazing opportunity to learn from you. I hope that also the audience can take really valuable insights from here. And well, thank you to everyone. We're gonna close right now, and we'll see you in the next PM Beers event. That it's gonna be, I think, in person. And let us know what you think about this one, and if you want us to continue doing this kind of webinars. That I think this was our first one with, and well, it was an honor to have such an amazing guest. Okay, bye everyone.